Welcome back to Spooky Ass Shit. I am your host, Eric Dwinnells. I say back because it's been a long time for me since I've been back. So hopefully you're coming back from having heard a different episode. I'm coming back from a rather large stretch. I think it's been about 2 weeks now that I haven't done a show. That was completely unintentional. Believe it or not, even for hosts of amazingly popular hit podcasts such as this one, we do have personal lives. And sometimes those get in the way. As a lot of you know, I've been struggling with a broken ankle, which is on the mend. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm out of the cast. I am now walking on crutches and with a boot. So not really walking, but kind of walking, taking those first steps. It does, however, mean that my leg gets very sore and tired by the end of the day. And then, of course, there's all the medical bills to worry about, and there's insurance companies to fight with, not to mention the day job and trying to buy a new car. All these things coming together at once have made it rather difficult to come home from work in a long, stressful day with a sore ankle and then say, oh, I want to do the podcast now. So I don't mean to put this on the back burner, but every once in a while that has to happen, and I've explained that that would happen if you were a fan of the show on the Facebook page. That is facebook.com/spookyas. You would have heard that and known that that was probably what was going on. So don't forget to join us there if you want the inside scoop a little bit sooner than everybody else. But here I am, back again. I'm going to be releasing 2 episodes this weekend, so make sure you get both of them, because that way we kind of catch up a little bit. So there'll be this episode and then another episode for you this weekend. Tonight we're going to be going international. I apologize in advance for the mispronunciations of names and places, but we are going to Japan, and Japanese is a language I do not speak, and Japan is a place I have never been, unfortunately. I'd like to go there. I'd like to travel a lot of the world, actually. I haven't been very far. So far, I've been to England twice, and that's about it. So I need to become more of a world traveler. If you live somewhere in the world and you want to Airbnb me, offer to put me up, that'd be lovely. So feel free to write into the show. Speaking of, let me remind you how you can do such things. Okay, let's get all this stuff out of the way. First of all, I want you to visit the website spookyas.com or spookyasshit.com. They both take you to the same place, and that is the show's blog page. On there, you can find every single episode of the show, and a lot of times there are pictures or YouTube links or links to research or articles that I used, and sometimes pictures from the show. And you can also, if you're curious, learn more about me there, because it does connect to my personal website for my acting and street performing and stand-up and all that stuff. There's not a ton of stuff on there, so you won't be overwhelmed. It's just the basics, you know. And you can also find links to our social media pages. Now, for some reason, I'm having trouble getting the Facebook page to switch from my performing page, which really I kind of abandoned a while ago, in favor of the Spooky AS page. So if you want to like us on Facebook, there's a link with the episodes descriptions. Those all point you directly to Spooky AS. The little icon on the page takes you to my, performance kind of thing, which again, like I said, I kind of started and almost immediately kind of gave up on in favor of working on Spooky AS stuff. So I'm trying to fix that, but in the meantime, go ahead and like both of them. Doesn't matter. But you can also find links to our Instagram and our Twitter, which are both at Spooky Ass Shit. And you can find us on Facebook, as I've mentioned, at facebook.com/spookyas. Questions, comments, show ideas, I welcome them all. You can send those to spookyasshit@gmail.com. And once again, to be clear, the name of the show is Spooky Ass, A-S-S, shit. Some people think I'm saying as, A-S. No. Spooky Ass Shit. Then when we abbreviate it is Spooky AS. So it's a stupid name. It's a bad decision on my part, but I feel like it's a little late to go back and change it now. But believe me, for a variety of reasons, it's a bad name. If you need some advice on podcasting and how to choose a name, hit me up. I can definitely tell you what not to do. That said, let's move into our prime subject for tonight. Like I said, we're going all the way to Japan for this one. This is one of the most famous unsolved crimes in Japan. And yet, well, I don't want to spoil it, but let me just say it's very interesting, and it's probably not going to go in directions that you think it's going to. This is called The Monster with 21 Faces. The story begins on March 18th, 1984. At around 9 p.m., two masked men, armed with pistols and a rifle, arrive at the estate of Katsuza Izaki, the president of Glico, a Japanese candy company behind the famed Pocky Sticks. That's mostly what we would know them for here in America. In Japan, that may or may not be what they're most popular for. But you know those Pocky Sticks. They're like these little biscuit sticks dipped in chocolate usually, but they sometimes have other flavors. My clown friend from Japan brought me some, and they were wasabi flavored. So they have all different kinds of flavors. But anyway, that's mostly what you might know the company for. The two men forced their way into the neighboring home of Izaki's mother. They tied her up, and they took her copy of the key to the main house. Using the key to enter the main house, they then tied up Izaki's wife and daughter. Believing the two men were ordinary robbers, Izaki's wife offered the masked men money in exchange for leaving the family be. But the men said they had not come for money. One of the masked men cut the telephone lines while the other searched the house looking for Katsuza Izaki. He came upon a locked bathroom door, which he kicked down, and discovered Izaki and two more of his children were hiding in that bathroom. Izaki panicked and began to scream for help. The masked intruder threatened to kill the entire family if Izaki did not shut up. The two men abducted Izaki at gunpoint and held him captive in a warehouse. The next morning, they called the director of Glico and demanded a ransom of 1 billion yen, which would be about $4.2 million U.S. currency at that time. And they also wanted 100 kilograms of gold bullion, pirate style. They said if they got this, they could assure the safe return of the company's president. However, 3 days later, on the 21st of March, Izaki managed to escape the warehouse. Now, what I found interesting about this is there's no explanation of how this happened. And I think that is a crucial part of the story that is missing when we start thinking about who might have done this, why they might have done this. I think we want to know exactly how he was able to get away. Just saying. Of course, the other problem is this is a Japanese story, so most of the news stories about it are in Japanese. And as I said, I don't speak or read Japanese. So maybe if you do and you have more information, you can write in and give us some corrections or whatever we need to make the story more accurate. But in the meantime, all we can go by is the reports that I do have here in English. So let's continue. Soon after, two fires believed to be the work of arsonists broke out at the Glico plant, and on April 16th, a plastic container containing hydraulic acid, along with a threatening note directed to Glico, were also found. You might notice I just said Glico and then I said Glyco in the same paragraph. Again, I'm not sure how it's supposed to be pronounced. I've heard it pronounced both ways in my research. It looks like it says Glyco, so I'm going with Glyco, but maybe it's Glico. I don't know. Continuing. An anonymous phone call told the company that the harassment would stop if they paid the terrorist $1.3 million. They were instructed to leave the money at a local barbecue restaurant. In Osaka, a young man was sitting in a parked car having a chat with a friend when two men approached and forced them out of the car at gunpoint. Now, these two men who approached, they may or may not have been wearing masks. I found conflicting reports. I like to imagine them wearing masks, but maybe that's just me. They ordered him to go into the restaurant and collect the $1.3 million. The young man agreed, but when he entered the restaurant looking for the money, he was arrested by police who had been monitoring the drop-off point. The young man told police his story, that, these guys came up and forced him to go in. But they did not believe him until his friend with the car was located, and the friend was able to independently verify the same story, backing up the suspect's claims. I hope there was more proof of their innocence, though. But again, I didn't find any. That's just because, anybody could say that. You work out that story ahead. Hey, I'm going to go try to rob this place. I'm going to tell them someone at gunpoint made me do it. If they come and find you, you just tell them the same thing, and then our story will back up and they'll believe us. Anybody could do that. So I hope that there is some more proof that these guys were actually innocent. But again, these are the reports that we have to go by. Now this is where it starts to get real interesting. On May 10th, Glico began receiving letters from a person or group calling itself, quote, the Monster with 21 Faces. Now, this name is not original. It came from the villain of a series of Japanese detective novels. But the monster claimed to have laced Glico candies with potassium cyanide. So the monster was saying, hey, we took some candies off the shelf, we put this poison in them, and now they're back on the shelf and your company's going to get in big trouble. So, what was Glico to do? If they continued to sell their product, maybe the threat was just a hoax and there would be no problem and they'd be able to keep making money and, functioning as a business. On the other hand, if their food were poisoned, this would be a nightmare, not only in the fact that human lives would be lost or at least potentially put in danger, but also their company would be forever linked with this horrible series of poisonings. So, naturally, they decided to pull their own product from store shelves. Now, this resulted in a loss of more than $21 million. Glico was hit so hard by this that they had to lay off somewhere around 450 part-time workers. Again, numbers vary according to the different reports, but 450 part-time workers. The monster with 21 faces threatened to place the tempered products in stores. Following these threats, a man wearing a Yorimari Giants baseball cap was caught on video placing Glico chocolate on store shelves by a security camera. The security camera photo was made public after this incident, but I've seen the photo and it's really nondescript. We're talking about 80s technology anyway, so it's black and white, it's grainy. It looks like a guy with dark hair wearing a baseball hat and a jacket and some sunglasses. You can't really, looks like could be just about anybody probably, right? Meanwhile, the monster with 21 faces also sent letters to the media. In it, they taunted police efforts to capture the culprits behind the scare. An excerpt from one such letter reads, Dear dumb police officers, don't tell a lie. All crimes begin with a lie, as we say in Japan. Don't you know that? Another letter, sent to a local police station, said, Why don't you keep it to yourself? You seem to be at a loss, so why not let us help you? We'll give you a clue. We entered the factory by the front gate. The typewriter we used is a pan writer. The plastic container used was a piece of street garbage. The monster with 21 faces. On June 26th, letters attributed to the monster were sent to several newspaper offices. The monster announced that it had, quote, become bored with this affair, and that they had burned 15 boxes of cyanide-tainted Glico chocolates and removed another box from store shelves in Osaka. Our colleagues include a 4-year-old child who every day wants to eat Glico products. We can't have this child crying all day. It is time to forgive Glico. But just because it decided to leave Glico alone, that doesn't mean the monster was done. Oh no, far from it. The monster had simply turned its attention to other food companies, namely the Morinaga Company and the Morada Ham Corporation. The monster claimed it would leave the Morada Company alone if it gave the monster 50 million yen, which was about $210,000 in U.S. currency. The monster instructed that a Morada employee should toss the ransom money onto a local train heading toward Kyoto when a white flag was displayed. An investigator disguised as a Morada employee followed the drop instructions of the monster. He spotted a suspicious man observing him while he was riding a train to the drop point. The man was described as a large, well-built man wearing sunglasses. His hair was cut short and permed, and he had eyes like those of a fox. When no white flags were displayed during the train trip, the undercover policeman and the fox-eyed man both got off the train at the Kyoto station, and while the investigator waited on a bench, the fox-eyed man continued to observe him. The investigator later headed back to Osaka, and the fox-eyed man boarded another car in the same train. When the investigator got off the train at Takatsu Station, the fox-eyed man boarded a Kyoto-bound train, and another undercover investigator tailed him from Kyoto, but the fox-eyed man eventually lost him. A sketch of the fox-eyed man was released, but the suspect was not identified. Many believe that the fox-eyed man is the same man that can be seen in the videotape from earlier in the year. In October 1984, a letter addressed to Moms of the Nation was signed by the monster with 21 faces. It was sent to Osaka news agencies with a warning similar to those sent to Glico. It stated that 20 packages of moringa candy had been laced with deadly sodium cyanide. After receiving this letter, police searched stores in cities from Tokyo to western Japan and found over a dozen lethal packages of moringa choco balls and angel pies. Luckily, they found these before anybody was poisoned. These packages had special labels put on them, such as "Danger, contains toxins." Police then received a second chance to catch the fox-eyed man on November 14th, when the monster group attempted to rob the House Food Corporation of 100 million yen, which is about $410,000, in yet another secret deal. At a rest stop on the Mancini Expressway in Otsuo, investigators saw the fox-eyed man wearing a golf cap and dark glasses, but again he evaded capture. The cash delivery van they were tailing continued to head towards the drop point, where they were to drop the money in a can under a white piece of cloth. When the delivery van reached the drop point, the white cloth was there, but there was no can. The investigative team was ordered to withdraw, believing that the drop was actually just an evaluation set up by the monster to see how the police would respond. However, an hour earlier, a patrol car from the local prefecture had spotted a station wagon with its engine still running and its headlights off. The station wagon was also sitting less than 50 meters from a white cloth suspended from a fence. Unaware of the secret ransom drop, the police officer drove up to the station wagon and shone a flashlight on the driver, revealing a thin-cheeked man in his 40s wearing a golf cap over his eyes and, more telling, a wireless receiver with headphones. Surprised by the policeman, the driver sped off, with the police car following in pursuit until the station wagon was able to lose the pursuing officer. The station wagon was later found abandoned near the Katsu station, and it had been discovered to have been stolen from a Kyoto prefecture. Inside the abandoned car was a radio transmitter that had been eavesdropping on the radio communications between police officers from 6 different prefectures, including Osaka, Kyoto, and Kobe. The prefectures who were handling the drop point task. Also received was a vacuum cleaner, although no evidence could be traced back to the monster group. After the bungled blackmail attempt on House Foods Corporation, the monster then turned its attention to Fujiya in December of 1984. In January of 1985, police released a facial composite of the fox-eyed man to the public. In August of 1985, continuing harassment by the Monster of 21 Faces and the failure to capture the fox-eyed man, Shiga Prefecture Police Superintendent Yokomoto killed himself by self-immolation. You guys remember that? That's when you set yourself on fire. Douse yourself in gasoline and set yourself on fire. Not the first time it's come up on this show, strangely enough, perhaps. 5 days after this event, on August 12th, the monster sent what would be its final message to the media. Yamamoto of Shiga Prefecture Police has died. How stupid of him. We've got no friends or secret hiding places in Shiga. It's Yoshino or Shikata who should have died. What have they been doing for as long as 1 year and 5 months? Don't let bad guys like us get away with it. There are many more fools who want to copy us. No career Yamamoto died like a man. So, we decided to give our condolences. We decided to forget about torturing food-making companies. If anyone blackmails any of these food-making companies, it is not us, but someone copying us. We are bad guys. That means we've got more to do other than bullying companies. It's fun to lead a bad man's life. The Monster with 21 Faces. After this letter, the Monster with 21 Faces was never heard from again. The statute of limitations for the kidnapping of Izake, the president of Glico, ran out in June of 1995, and the statute of limitations on the attempted poisonings ran out in February of 2000. That means, theoretically, even if the guilty party was to come forward right now and confess fully that they did these things, they could not be charged with these crimes. So far, nobody has come forward to claim responsibility or identify themselves as the Monster with 21 Faces. I just think that's a cool name. Sounds like some kind of crazy kaiju or something. Or like I don't know about you guys, but when I was a youngster, I used to watch the channel USA's Kung Fu Theater. And there were always like gangs of bad guys with names like this. So, I don't know. The Monster with 21 Faces. That's a badass name. Let's talk about some of the suspects. Following the release of the sketch of the fox-eyed man in January of 1985, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police quickly identified the culprit as Manabu Miyazaki. Labeled as Mr. M, or Material Witness M, Miyazaki was suspected of issuing a 1976 tape declaring support for a local union in a labor dispute with Glico that bore similarities to numerous declarations in the Monster with 21 Faces letters. There had been numerous whistleblowing incidents between 1975 and 76 that were also attributed to Miyazaki, which highlighted Glico's dumping of starches and other industrial waste into local river and drainage systems. Miyazaki was also suspected to have been involved with the resignation of the union leader over accounting irregularities when Glico Ham and Glico National Foods merged. In addition, his father was the boss of a local Yakuza group, that's the Japanese mob, and Miyazaki himself bore a striking resemblance to the fox-eyed man. Speculation had gone on for months that Miyazaki was the fox-eyed man, until the Tokyo Metropolitan Police checked his alibis and eventually cleared him of any wrongdoing. This was not all bad news for Miyazaki, however, as he shrewdly turned this episode into a kind of celebrity and used that to his own advantage. He published a book about his life, and he says that he is extremely grateful for the notoriety and the 100 million yen that he has made through the book for being associated with the crimes of the Monster of 21 Faces. His book is titled Tapamono, outlaw, radical, suspect. My Life in Japan's Underworld. It was released in 1996, and the title, Tapamano, means someone who pushes ahead. And it's important to note that this book was published before the statute of limitations in the blackmailing poison case ran out in 2000. So, yes, the kidnapping case, he couldn't be tried for that even if he was guilty, but he could still be tried for the poisons. So that means that's kind of more proof that he's probably not the fox-eyed man, because why would he release a book explaining his life of crime before the statute of limitations was up? He also has a cult-like following who refer to themselves as the Fox-Eyed Bunch. As for other serious suspects in the case, well, there are none. And the case has officially been closed since the statute of limitations has run out on the case anyway. So now the only thing we can ponder is why someone would do this. Because what I didn't want to spoil in the beginning of the episode is that, with the possible exception of the police superintendent who set himself on fire, there were no real victims in this case. Nobody was poisoned. No money was collected for the blackmailings. So what was this all about? Now, of course, some people have said this has something to do with the Yakuza. Some people might speculate this is just a lone, crazy, psychotic person, and there is no monster with 21 faces. It's just this fox-eyed man, perhaps, who was trying to make himself sound like a big man, of course. If it was part of some big organization, would it always be the same guy going out? Who knows? Maybe this is the hired muscle of the organization, or maybe this is just, the guy they give the little errands to. But on the other hand, maybe it is just this guy. Maybe it's just this fox-eyed man who's trying to build himself up and make himself sound tough. But why would they do this? Well, I think perhaps the letter to the mothers of Japan, or mothers of the world, whatever it was, that could be a clue that this person is kind of a food terrorist. They've got something against the food companies. We know food companies do purposely try to make their foods addictive and that kind of thing. And of course, as we learned, there may have been some questions of how they were disposing of their waste. So perhaps these environmental and I guess you would call them social causes could have something to do with the motivation. Or, like most crimes, it could simply be about the money. Not the money that they collect from the blackmailing, but perhaps some kind of corporate espionage. Because Glico, for example, their stock plummeted when it was announced that they were the target. They were the initial target and the biggest known target of the monster with 21 faces. Their stock plummeted when it was found out that possibly their candies were going to be poisoned. And of course, people were going to be very weary of buying them. So then once the monster, whoever they may have been, or it was, saw that this was the case, maybe they went on to mess with other food companies in an attempt to bring down their stocks. Why? Well, maybe because they worked for a food company, or they were a food company, a rival food company to these other ones. Now, as I said earlier, a big question in my mind is, how did the president of Glico, not the president, the CEO, how did he escape? Because that sounds a little fishy, that he would be kidnapped and then just able to escape like that. But again, this also could point not only to him possibly being involved, that's one possibility, but another possibility is that he was legitimately kidnapped and held captive. But again, the fact that he would be able to get away points to this not being a monster with 21 faces, not a big-time outfit, not Yakuza or something like that, but instead just an individual or perhaps a few individuals. We know there was at least 2 people involved, if the stories are to be believed about the kidnapping and all. So we know that it probably is more than one person, but I would say probably just a small group of people, concerned citizens, they might call themselves. Although they call themselves bad guys, so maybe we'll just take them at their word and say that they are bad guys. There's no political or environmental leanings behind it. These are just bad guys who thought they could get away with taunting food companies, and guess what? In a way, they did. They didn't get any money out of it. Apparently, these blackmails, plots, and everything, they never seemed to work out the way that the monster with 21 faces had hoped. But they did get some form of notoriety, and of course, now they are one of the biggest mysteries in the history of Japanese crime, I suspect. So, that really is the end of the story of the monster with 21 faces. It sounds a lot cooler than it actually is. The monster with 21 faces. I can't get past that. The Japanese are very good at naming things. I think that's what we've learned today. So again, I invite you to check out the website, spookyasshit.com or spookyas.com. Both take you to the show's blog page. Listen to each and every episode. Pictures, outtakes, all that jazz. Links to our social media. We are at spookyasshit on both Instagram and Twitter. And you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/spookyas. And I please ask you to please take a moment this week. Head over to iTunes or iHeartRadio or wherever else you may listen from. Even if you're watching this on YouTube with a big static picture, go ahead, write a review, leave a review there. 5 stars is preferable. If you have a suggestion for the show, ways to improve the show, I ask you to please write those in an email to me, and I'll address them as best I can. That is at spookyasshit@gmail.com. And if you could share the show with someone that you know who might be a potential spookaroo, that would be magnificent. That's the only way the show grows. I do not pay for advertising. I can't be bothered with all that stuff right now. I can barely keep myself afloat here, let alone start paying for advertising and all that. So the only way the show grows is through you guys. So I really, truly appreciate it if you share the show, turn people onto it. I know the show's not for everyone because, well, first of all, the topics in general, but then also the topics, when I do cover them, I kind of take kind of a lighthearted approach, and I'm not so serious about everything like a lot of these paranormal true crime podcasts are. So if you enjoy the style of the show and you think you know someone else who might enjoy the style of the show and can, one week we can talk about a true crime case, and I can stumble over all my words, and it might be a true murder or something like that. And then the next week we're talking about a sitcom from the 70s or 80s and how silly it was. That's the kind of show we run here. It's Spooky AS. It's all things spooky. And that is purposely a very wide net that we're casting. So I hope you continue to enjoy the show. If you are, please let me know. Again, it powers me through. It shows me there's a reason I'm doing this. It's not just for my own benefit, and it's not just an excuse to hang out with my friends and to talk about spooky ass shit, but it actually is being enjoyed by you guys and being shared and spread and loved. And that kind of thing is what motivates me to keep doing this. So, until next time, friends, don't be afraid.